All right, what is going on today? So, in today's video, I got the opportunity to speak with Sarah Wright. I'm gonna throw her Instagram right down below, basically right here, and you can go and check her out. She was somebody that I met when I used to work in, the fitness industry in a gym, and she was one of the personal trainers there. And her and I connected because we kind of were able to talk to each other about, if we were having a bad day, or I guess you could say she was always kind of someone who genuinely cared about the people that were around her, and made an impression in the sense that she makes people feel like she's there for them and that she cares for them. So since her and I have stopped working together, she's kind of developed and grown from not just personal training, but helping people out with their entire lifestyle and their habits, and kind of just improving their mind state. So I really hope you guys enjoy this video. I really hope it gives you some sort of new perspective. If you are brand new to this, I really hope that you enjoy this video. I just really hope that you find some value in it, and if you really enjoy it, please consider subscribing or hitting the notification button or leaving a comment or liking the video, whatever it is, however you want to show your love or share your opinion, or really just help other people know that they're not alone. And if you are subscribed and if you're not brand new to this, then thank you so much for supporting this journey, supporting this movement, and thank you for being you. Thank you for being there. So without further ado, let's jump into this conversation. I really hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did.
Ready to go.
Sweet, we're recording. All right, what's going on? Here was Sarah Wright. So we met actually as co-workers a while back working in a gym. She was a personal trainer there, and I just kind of worked there as management staff, making sure people were happy. But yeah, I'm gonna let her do her own little introduction. You can find her on Instagram at Sarah Jessica Taylor. But why don't you tell the people where else they can find you and what you're about?
Hey everybody, so my name's Sarah Jessica Taylor and I am a personal health coach. I kind of coined the term a conscious health coach because one of the things that I came up with a lot in my career as a personal trainer, doing one-on-one and a lot of online training as well, was that many people are really concerned about the bottom line. There's a lot of competition, there's a lot of stuff out there, there's a lot of really good people, but when it comes down to it, I just saw my peers getting really consumed in numbers and volume, and I really didn't want to be like that. I wanted to be a conscious health coach and actually make sure that my clients' health and personal well-being was always coming before me getting paid, and that's really what kind of brought me into the space that I'm at now, which is where I do some one-on-one training. I don't think I'll ever give that up because I do love that element of my job, and I do that here in North Vancouver. But I also do online learning modules with my clients. I have an 8-week program that I take clients through one-on-one, where we kind of break down the barriers of the mental models. I have some education background in positive psychology, neurolinguistic programming, cognitive behavioral therapy. I could go on with my credentials forever, but that's not the point that matters. Really, what I try to illustrate in my whole philosophy is our life, we have an opportunity to choose our own identity, and we all have these barriers, myself included. Mark, I know you have your own struggles that you deal with, as everybody does. And I really want to encourage people to take this life as an opportunity to choose their own identity and really consider who they aspire to be and how they're going to show up in this world. And I see my role as a coach to just kind of guide people through that process and, share my experience and be very open and vulnerable, but what I've tried, what's worked, what hasn't, and provide people with the tools and the encouragement and the power to believe in themselves. So, that's kind of long and winded, but it's
No,
hard
it's
to
sick.
really choose one title that would encompass what I am so passionate about.
Yeah, because I feel like you've kind of, like, as long as I've known you, I feel like you've kind of like evolved like step to step, like adding more and more to your repertoire. So like, obviously you were doing things before we met, but I watched you kind of go from like personal trainer, and then you kind of saw what you really liked about it and then what you really didn't like about it, and you just kind of added more of the elements that you enjoyed, like how can I impact these people more, and how can I get away from these stressors. And I feel like you're just kind of growing and evolving.
Thank you.
I
Yeah, I
like
feel the
that.
same way. I think it's really important, and it's one of those things I struggle with because I identify myself. I'm somebody who is, I consider myself a high achiever, and I think my biggest fear in life is to not progress and not to grow. And one thing that I've had to reconcile a lot is that not everybody's like me. So as much as I think, we all have to get better and improve and progress and change, for some people, they're very happy with where they're at, and what progress looks like to one person is not necessarily the same as what it looks like to another. So just understanding those boundaries and respecting them in other people is probably one of the bigger struggles that I face, because I do tend to push people into that higher tier of what I would consider achievement. But just being respectful, and that's why I think the element of counseling, of coaching, is so important, because you have to understand where your clients are at, where they want to go, but also what their boundaries and limitations are. Like, some people might be satisfied with just losing the 5 pounds. They don't need abs, right? So I think it's really important for, as a coach myself, and for everybody to just understand that, like, my goals are not they shouldn't be put upon my clients. What my goals are for my client, you always have to help your client achieve their goals.
Yeah, 100%. I think that coincides with pretty much anything related to like happiness or anything like that, because
Mhm.
everyone's happiness looks different, right? And I didn't
You
realize
nailed
that
it.
until like I had a funny conversation with one of my buddies. We were talking about, how each other spends money, and we were like, oh yeah, but you spend money ridiculously on this type of thing, but I would spend money, say I spend a lot of money on food and like kind of eating out. And we were kind of chatting about it, and then we both kind of realized it's like, well, dude, you're spending money on things that make you happy, and then you restrict yourself on things that don't, right? So it's kind of
Mhm.
like there's no right or wrong way to spend your money. There's no right or wrong way to be happy. Like, everyone has their own kind of way of doing it, right?
100%. And I think that's a really respectful thing to consider. It's very wise to recognize where other people have their own filters and lenses of the world. And I guess that's the whole joy of a friendship or a coach, because I always tell my clients, for this hour that we're together, when we do this kind of work, I'm not your friend. And in many instances, I'm also not your counselor, because I'm not your counselor. I'm your coach. So the difference there is, you're spending all your money, or you're spending all your time, or whatever it is, on things that make you happy. But so many times people will come and they're actually complaining. So that's where I love my job as a coach, because it's like, okay, you say, um, you have no money, but you blow it on all these things. And if those are things that genuinely make you happy, why are you here in front of me so mad? So just peeling those layers back and getting to the root source of, what is authentic happiness for you and what it is for you. I think so many people in this world are just lost in the prepositions that they see from society, from the way that they were raised. Oh, I have this expectation. I'll get a house. I'll have this nice job. I'll get X amount of dollars. I'll get the things that'll make me happy. And it's such a cliche, but I wish more people would understand that real happiness is intrinsic. Like, it comes from here, and all of these things outside are just serving to validate what we are lacking. So I mean, that's the kind of magic and the passion of where I find myself today.
Yeah. So how did like this whole journey start for you? Like, I kind of know you were doing like competing. You were in bikini
Yeah,
before you moved to Vancouver here. And so I'm
yeah.
assuming you were a personal trainer before you got here. But like, how did you start getting into fitness? How did you start getting into personal training in the first place?
That is a tricky one. Okay, so do you want to know first about personal training specifically, or health
You tell
coaching,
whatever
mental?
you
Okay,
can
there's two
choose.
stories,
You can
but
choose.
we're gonna have to open a tab here, because sometimes I go on a tangent and I
That's
forget
fine.
the first one. So let's start with fitness. I was
Okay.
an athlete my whole life, like legit. I think I could figure skate before I could walk. So I
Right.
was a very, very, very competitive athlete. I never really had an awareness of the foods that I ate or even what I looked like. I wasn't super like conscious of these things. And I was good athlete for a long time. I did every sport you could possibly think of. And when I got to university, the demands of school and working out, all of it, you kind of have to pick and choose. So I chose rowing, and I was on the varsity rowing team. That is a 50-week-a-year commitment. So every single day for 50 weeks out of the year, you only get 2 weeks off, one for Christmas and one in the summer. That's 5:30 in the morning. You are on the water for 2 hours, 5:30 to 7:30. So, and oftentimes for varsity, you have an hour of training in the afternoon as well. It's very, very, very intense. And the way that I do sports is kind of always to the point of injury. I take it as far as I can go. And I did the same thing with rowing. So, I had it's so weird. Like, people have these stories of being bullied as children. And I was never a bully and I was never bullied until I got to university. And then in my second and third year university, I went through some pretty intense bullying from the most weird people. It was from my crewmates. So the people who I spent all my time with, they're supposed to be your best friends, your family. You spend so much time with these people that you know them like your brothers and sisters. Like, I can't explain how close the bonding is. And I was bullied by this group of people. So obviously it was devastating. I left rowing. I just couldn't be in that community anymore. And sports for me at that point, and the whole capacity of being on a team, was devastating because I didn't trust people. So from there, I stopped exercising, and this was kind of at the peak of. So we'll weave in story number two, my mental health distortions, if you will. So at the time, I had just been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and I was going through treatment. I had been taking medications and going to therapy for about a year and a half. And I never realized the importance of exercise for mental health until I stopped rowing. Because for me, I'd always taken it for granted. It had been my entire life. So only when I stopped did I really understand how much that was keeping me sane at the time. So things really unraveled quite quickly during this period of my final year of university, fourth year. I was not exercising. I never ate well really I moved to, until I moved to Toronto, which was maybe a year later. Anyway, so I went through this span of time, maybe 3-4 years, but I didn't exercise really. Really tumultuous mental health, roller coasters all over the place. It was horrible. And then when I was living in Toronto, something just came to the back of my head, and I was at rock bottom. And I won't go through the whole story, but it was a dire time. And I projected into my future, and I just thought, I can't live like this. Like, I can't live the way that I am now. This is not who I was born to be. This is not my potential. This is not my identity. I don't want to be this person. And if I choose that I don't want to be this person, then I don't have to be this person. And I decided I was going to take myself off medication. It was definitely the hardest and worst thing I've ever done in my life, was wean myself off medication, because at that point I was taking 9 pills in the morning, 7 in the afternoon, 11 at night. It was all over the place. I was completely dependent. So getting off medication, I knew that I had to substitute those medications that were helping me with something else. And that's where I turned to the gym. So I signed up for a gym membership for the first time. I think I was 23 at that point, 23, 24, and started exercising, and I loved it. At first, I just did cardio like every other insecure little girl hiding in the corner, right? Did some classes, hated it, and eventually I turned to weight training, and I found that combination of weight training and a little bit of cardio, which I still maintain every single day, because that worked for me. That was the precious little tipping point that was effective. So through that journey, weight training, I didn't really know what I was doing. So I hired a coach. I became a certified personal trainer through the ISA, the International Sports Science Association.
Mhm.
It's an online certification that is very good. So I did all that, and that's when I decided I wanted to try a fitness competition, because my coach was okay, but this is a philosophy that I have for my personal work, and I think everyone should have it as well, because it's not hard to do a good job. It's not hard to be good at what you do, to be great at what you do. You just have to care. And it was very clear that my coach at the time was probably a great coach. He just didn't care about me. So that was kind of the line in the sands. And I thought, all right, I'm going to prep myself for a fitness competition, because I know I can do this. Like, I can apply the principles, of the science of what I've learned through my certification. I have the experience. And that was the Popeyes Fall Classic 2017. And I won my category, and then I won the whole show, which was amazing. It
Unreal.
was incredible to be able
Yeah.
to apply yourself in such a way. And just, it was one of the few times in my life that I can point to and say, that is a time where I can look back upon and use that as evidence. So I think everybody has these moments in their life, maybe not as clear or as celebrated and as large as that, but everybody has wins. And you have to have those wins. You have to know what they are. You have to pull them out of your back pocket. And anytime you have, those self doubt, negative beliefs, those things that creep in, you have to pull those trump cards and say, no, like, you need to be a confident person because you have what it takes. You can apply yourself. And when you do, look at what you're capable of. So that was kind of my fitness journey. And real brief in a more condensed, summarized version. I studied psychology in school, and specifically, I was really interested in neuroscience and sleep. And that is kind of what helped me build the foundations of how I manage my mental health today. But, counseling to me seemed lucrative. And I did do some work in my university and a little bit in Toronto as well. And I was very frustrated by counseling as a whole because oftentimes I say this as someone who has experience being counseled as well and still do. A lot of the times people go to their counselor and they're just looking for an answer. But when you're in such a broken, fragile, hard, difficult place, it's difficult to hear a hard truth, which your counselor will ethically almost never give you. And, to take that direction and do the work is you're not in a place that's motivated enough if you're at your worst to really lift yourself up. Right. So I was very disheartened that I didn't feel that I was being effective. I was good at listening, but I wasn't good at inspiring change. So that's how I got into personal training as a career, because here were people who wanted to lose 40, 20 pounds. They were committed, they were motivated, that were at the root's end. And then how I switched back to what I guess is health coaching, which combines the two of counseling and personal training, is that, what holds everyone back from achieving their fitness goals? Why do you self sabotage on your diet? Because there is an emotional component. There's something internal that you haven't dealt with, some self-limiting belief that makes you feel that you're not worthy of your dream body, that you can't, that, all these little things that creep in. And that's a subconscious belief that you need to identify and that you need to overcome in order to have the life, the body, the career of your dreams. And that's how I came full circle into fusing the two into what I now have as my dream career.
Yeah, I was gonna say two things. There was one thing that you said, like kind of once you did the show, you said that you could kind of like point back to it and use it as an example. Have you ever heard of David Goggins? Do you know who that is?
Yes. Oh my
Hey,
gosh. You read his book, of course.
yeah, I read his book
Can't
and
hurt
I've
me.
listened to a lot. Yeah, I've read that book and then I listened to a lot of interviews. And have you heard him talk about his cookie jar principle?
Was it in the book? Because I would have read
It
it,
wasn't,
but I'm gonna
no.
need a refresher. So then no.
It wasn't in the
Yeah,
book,
I don't
no. I
remember.
heard him talk about it in an interview, but he talks about having like he says it's like a mental cookie jar. So when you get into a spot
I
where
like this analogy.
yeah, he says that when you get into a spot where you're facing like a really big challenge and you don't know if you could go into it, you have to dig into like this mental cookie jar, and the cookies inside the jar are little events that have you've triumphed over something. And so you
Mm,
kind of can recall like all these times of, you know, maybe I was dieting really hard, maybe I was doing a lot of cardio at the time, but I did it. Like I ended up doing it and
yeah.
I'm fine now. I'm okay. So
Yeah.
like you can kind of dig into this jar and pull out these little nuggets of gold that you've created throughout your life and just
I
kind of take
absolutely
note
love
of them.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's
So
really important.
yeah, so I actually, like I did the Popeyes Fall Classic 2 years before as a junior bodybuilder, and I only came fifth place. And I didn't do as well as you, but I
It's a
always look
tough,
back at that.
weird sport.
Yeah, but I always look back at that and I think about the actual training for it. Like, I'm like, dude,
Mhm.
I tore a muscle during my prep, and thinking about like all the different things I had to do trying to figure out nutrition. And it's like, dude, you did all of that by yourself. And like, it's something, at least the effort, like to think about, dude, you put in that much effort before and you weren't even getting paid for anything. So
Yeah,
like, you know, you could
that's
dig deep.
passion.
Yeah, you can dig deep and work hard throughout, like, something that you actually love. It's kind of something that I always kind of reflect back on. So I could imagine, like, dude, if you came first place, like I only came fifth place, to be able to
And it's
dig
a
back.
win, but honestly, I think one of the things, and I've admitted this before, but I'll say it again. The Popeyes Fall Classic, the show that I won, was the easiest prep for me. It was the easiest because my body was in a very good spot. I hadn't been dieting. I hadn't been, I'd been loving my body. I'd been through some stress, life events and stuff, but I was in a good place. And I think anyone in your audience, if they're considering prepping, the number one thing you have to say, and there's never a good time, right? So let's be honest, like you don't wait for the perfect time. But if you're going through something, whether it's like, a breakup, or, you've got a poor relationship with food, or you've been on a long cycle of yo-yo dieting and you've just lost 40 pounds. So now you think it's time to compete. No, you need to bring your body to a state of optimum health, because the hardest show for me, and the one I'm most proud of, was the show that I did in 2007 or 2019 fall. I went to Las Vegas, the Amateur Olympia. I did well, but in terms of, did I fulfill my potential? No. And did I even make the top 5? No. So that was by placings, the worst show that I've ever participated in, hands down. And it was also one of the best shows, because for me, I gave 100%. I was so committed. I found deeper, different levels of myself. And that doesn't always necessarily mean that they're good. So I think that's the thing. People are like, oh, go another level. I found a layer of myself that was very, very scary. And that was a good thing for me to see, because now I have a philosophy where, will I compete again? Won't I compete again? Honestly, probably. I want to try wellness. But do I have to do that this year? Do I have to do it in 2021? Like, what are the deadlines here? It doesn't matter anymore, because the number one primary thing is that I bring myself mentally, physically, emotionally into a good place. And the wonderful thing about shows is that there's always other shows, but win or lose, you have to learn something from the experience. And what I learned about myself, my resilience, my potential, my character. So many people that were in, it doesn't matter what other people do. So, comparing myself to so many people would have quit or whatever. The point is, I didn't. I showed up. I wasn't my best. I gave the best presentation ever, knowing in the back of my head that the physique just wasn't quite there. And I looked amazing. And I know all of the things that I could have done better, or, should have done better. But the whole point was what I got out of it mentally, and how far it brought me into a place of, oh, I could be here now. I could be stuck here. I could lose my health. I could lose my mental health, and just having the inner strength and the resilience, being called upon to do the hard thing. And I guess that's the lesson that we all need to realize from your experience, pulling a muscle and still finishing, and, showing up strong and doing that. We need to have these experiences so that we can help other people. So, well, in that moment, I might not have understood why I was being, I felt humiliated, I felt ashamed, I felt broken. And that didn't make sense to me at the time, given the effort and the passion and the commitment that I had made. But now I understand it, because now I can take a place of empathy. I mean, as somebody who succeeded as a winner in Popeye's Fall Classic, what do I have to share with other people? All I saw was success. And if all you see is success, you have no experience of hardship that can actually help you be empathetic and relatable to the people, because not everyone can win, right? So, how are you going to help those who aren't winning?
Yeah, yeah. And do you think that because you said for the Popeyes show, you said it was like, it felt like the easiest prep you've done.
Mm.
Do you think that the fact that, your body and your mind, and you were kind of, I'm assuming, lower stress than the Las Vegas show, do you think that that's all, like, has something to do with the fact that it went so well and the fact that you won? Like, do you think that
I think
that's kind of correlated?
100%. So I think the thing with the Popeyes Fall Classic is that my intentions were pure. And I think everybody needs to ask themselves this in anything that they do, whether it's competing or otherwise. Why am I doing this? And I ask my clients to ask themselves this, 5 times. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? What's my why? And then you'll get your superficial answer that you say to Mark or say to your parents or whatever. Then ask yourself again, why? Get to the bottom of the reason. Like, why are you doing this? For Popeyes, it was so clear. It was clear because I needed to prove to myself that I was capable. I needed to test. I needed to get over, this belief that I wasn't a good enough coach because, I hadn't got, a degree in kinesiology because I wasn't like so and so who's been a trainer for 10 years. I needed to prove to myself that I was worthy. That's an intrinsic goal, right? With other shows, it became about winning. And as soon as it becomes about winning or beating another person or getting something external, that's about validation, right? And nobody can give that to you except for yourself. So what happened after the Popeyes Fall Classic, most people don't see is, or didn't see, is that I was up here and I went deep down because all of a sudden I got, attention and questions and, validation externally that I wasn't expecting and I wasn't prepared for. I feel like, oh, you're so good. I'm like, no, 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 I'm not so good. I'm not special. I'm just your average person who applied myself and, the things lined up for me. But I didn't need that to actually feel that it was a win. If I didn't win the overall, I was already late. I won. The picture of me so happy is the picture of me winning my class. And even that isn't. Being in the top 5 was enough. That was enough validation, right? Being happy with your presentation and the way that you show up, that was the win. But for me, yeah, having that stress of understanding, is my why from the outside or the inside? And when it's on the outside, you're never going to meet your goals in a way that is successful. When it's from the inside, you can't lose.
Hmm. Yeah, I really like that right now because I don't think that I ever really had plans in terms of like competing again. My fitness is like a completely taken a 180. Like I went from, lifting weights 6 days a week and maybe doing cardio once or twice a week to, my training style right now is just like 3 times a week I'm lifting weights, and then every other day I'm doing like a
Good for
little
you.
jog or a little bike ride, like
Hmm.
just kind of moving. Like that's kind of where
Hmm.
my fitness is at right now.
I
It's just
love hearing that.
like, yeah, moving and feeling good. Like I'm feeling
Movement
strong
is
because I'm
so
still
important.
lifting, but I feel way better. Like I feel like my balance is improved. I feel like I can breathe better. Like everything just
Hmm.
feels like it's moving through me better. It's good. I feel much better in terms of just like, yeah, moving better and eating well.
And I wish more people would be able to find a happiness in that spot, especially competitors, former competitors. And one thing that I learned from the last prep I did, it's almost like I got all these messages from every cell in my body that just said, hey, you need to respect me. You need to respect me a lot more. And what you're doing right now is not something that you could be, should be, or is right for your body in 10 years from now. So I think we get very dogmatic, especially trainers or people in the gym who are doing the same routine that they did 50 years ago. I mean, if that makes you happy, sure, but like as someone who was a former athlete, I said I took myself to the point of injury and then I switched sports, right? Because that's what happens when you do that repetitive movement over and over again and you're just abusing your body. I will never not lift weights. I think there's such an incredible value, not just from an anti-aging perspective, from a metabolic perspective. There's so many. We don't need to dive into all of the amazing uh, side effects of lifting heavy weights, but there's a lot to be said about not just looking good, but feeling good in your body, being able to move, having a health status that is just as reflective on the inside as it is on the outside. And I can say firsthand, and this isn't the case for everyone. So it's not like a, shame on bodybuilders because for some people it works. It really does. But just because that's what works for another person doesn't mean that it works for you. So for me, I love lifting weights, but I do have to have mix of circuits of cardio, rest days, where I just go for a long hike or an easy bike ride. You have to respect your body and be able to listen to the messages that it's sending you in order to have any kind of longevity. Otherwise, you are doing somebody else's dream, right? You're following in their footsteps. And one of the things that came to my mind recently is the danger of understanding what is possible. So you see someone else, I see Mark and he wins a show, and now I know it's possible. Right now I know it's possible for, if Mark can do it, I can do it. Of course you can. You can. The 4-minute mile was broken, and all of a sudden everybody broke it, right? So we all know that analogy, but I think the danger in that is just because Mark did it, um, and that means I can do it, doesn't mean that I have to do it the same way Mark did it or in the same time restriction that Mark did it. So Mark did it in 3 months, I have to do it in 3 months. And I think that's the problem, especially in the fitness world and in the weight loss community, is just because Joe Schmo was able to lose 100 pounds on, this Subway diet or whatever it might be, in 3 months, then I have to do it the same way in the same amount of time. This is your life. It's your body, it's your health, it's your mind. And when someone shows you the potential, they open the door and they show you what's possible. I think it's encouraging to follow that and to believe in yourself and to know that you're capable, but also to find your own way along the way, because what works for somebody else is not going to work for you. And I wish that there was some universal truths I could share here, but the reality is the best thing you can do is just go deep on your self discovery journey and use the resources around you to kind of try different tools until you understand what fits for you.
Yeah, and I think that even like to go even further into that, like I feel like just because like say I see a peer or someone that I know do something, say they win a bodybuilding show, or just say they like, I don't know, make it to the Olympics for volleyball, whatever it is, right? It doesn't even mean you have to do that. Like you
Mm,
could just take their level of achievement and say, oh, it's
so good.
possible to achieve that high. And then I
Yeah.
could do that in whatever I love. Like
Hmm.
maybe you're a painter and you're just like, you just paint houses. Like you could just apply that kind of effort into being the best painter and become a millionaire through that. Like it's, you don't have to follow everyone else's path to a T either. You don't have to do it in the
You're
same time.
completely right. And
Like
I think that circles back to like the happiness, right? Like what actually makes you happy. Because especially with social media, the way that it is, I mean, it's a love hate, right? Because you see everybody's at their best, and very few people are expressing their true, authentic vulnerability. And I do admire and congratulate is the wrong word, but I think it's very inspiring that you show who you are and your struggles, and you're very open and honest with your audience. And I think the world needs more people like that. And I think that we'll see a shift, a definite change in what is trending and popular and who has the influencer voice, as people just get sick of seeing the same glossy, overproduced fake smiles, because we bought into that for many years. We bought into that for the last 10 years, saying, oh, this person's happy because they bought this product, or because they did a fitness competition, they got that success, so that must mean I need to do that. I need to follow in their footsteps in order to achieve that level of happiness and success. And we're sick of that kind of advertising, because we've bought into it, we tried it, we know it doesn't work. So the world is parched for authenticity right now, for vulnerability, for realness. And that's what I see as a shift in trend. At least I hope so. But I tend to be a very positive thinking person, so I do aspire to see more of that among everybody, because I only think through it is scary, to be honest, and to share your openness and vulnerability. And that's definitely something that I struggle with a lot as a coach. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was share from your scars, not your wounds. So if it's something that you're dealing with that still isn't healed, don't share it, because your audience is not your therapy, right? But if you have a scar and something that you've healed, you've worked through, it's no longer sensitive for you, please do share what you've learned, because you never know who out there is listening, who needs to hear that realness. Because we are all sick of opening up social media and just seeing smiling, happy people all the time. And not to say that isn't good, but is it authentic, right? Like I post pictures like that all the time because I'm genuinely authentic. But there's a lot of times where I'm a lot moodier, and I want to show that to people, because it's okay to. I know this pursuit of happiness is ridiculous, because it's fleeting, it's never going to actually arrive. And it's passive. It's an emotional state. You can't have it. It's not yours. It's an experience. um so yeah.
Yeah, it's a journey, not a destination. You just kind of have to enjoy the ride, right?
Yep.
I love that. That was one thing that I kind of realized this year is like it's not like you're gonna get to a point where you're just happy. Like it's not that's not like how it happens. And it
Yeah.
was Alan Watts, actually, a philosopher that I kind of started listening to a lot when I was struggling quite a bit. He has an analogy he uses basically saying that, it's kind of like a dance. It's like a dance. That's what he says. It's like a dance. So when you watch someone dance, whether it's like a duo, they're doing a salsa, whatever it is, it's not like the main focuses are where they start and where they end. The main
Mm.
focus is all the actions in the middle, all of the little
Mm.
intricate movements they do,
I like that.
and how they kind of, it's not about where they start and where the destination is at the very end. Otherwise, the best dancers would be like the ones that just took one step. Like it would just be like, bang, done.
Mm.
The meat and potatoes is like everything that happens in the middle. Like it's the journey that happens, right? It's not where they start,
Mhm.
where they finish. It's all the movements they do together, right?
Yeah, I really like that. That's a good analogy. I'm gonna have to remember that one. I always like
Yeah.
to use the quote, very, very popular, famous, "This too shall pass." And I think oftentimes people use that in negative situations. So they just know, oh, this too shall pass, hardship, all this craziness that's going on in the world, just it'll go away. But I think that's one of my favorite things to remember when things are going really, really well for me, because I think when things are happy and good and positive, we're just trying to get more of it, right? It's like, oh, I'm happy, okay, let's get more, and things are going so fast that you never really pause to appreciate that moment and to feel and to make it into a cookie or a golden nugget or a trump card in your back pocket for later. You're not really paying attention as sharply as you should be, or you would want to be, versus if you were negative, right? So we're so attuned to really fixating on what's negative, that when things are positive, we're not really paying attention. And when I like ground myself in that phrase, when things are really good, I like to stop myself and remember, this moment, this happiness, this abundance, this awesomeness, this also will pass. You don't get this forever, and that's okay. So, pay attention, appreciate it, download these memories, save them for later, so that when you're in your darkest times and this too shall pass, you can call upon these moments vividly and just remember, the world's a beautiful place. You've been up, you've been down, you have no idea where you're going next, but it is possible that you can be here again.
Yeah, 100%. It's pretty funny. It's really difficult. And what was I thinking about? There was something you said earlier. Trying to
What?
remember now. Oh, it was I wanted to just say like I kind of felt like that as well, because what you were saying was when you were talking about difficulties about counseling and just going in and looking for an answer. It shot a
Mm.
memory into my head vividly of going in to speak to a doctor, and I pretty much just sat there for the first like 15 minutes and just started rambling off about, he started asking me questions about my lifestyle and my nutrition and how much I sleep and my relationships at the time, like with my family and loved ones. And we just kind of spoke for about 20 minutes, and then I was like, yeah, and I'm I just I can't figure out what's going on. And he kind of said to me, he's like, are you looking for me to just give you like a one word answer, like something that can just give you happiness? Like I don't have, I'm really sorry, but like if that's what you're looking for, it won't happen. Like I'm willing to
Mhm.
work with you, but you have to understand the reality of things. And I was like, it
Mhm.
was like a shock to me. I was like, this is someone that's actually being realistic. I was like actually stunned. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
it was insane. Like it
I
vivid.
think counselors and psychologists have among the hardest jobs. For the longest time, that was my aspiration. And then I just realized, from an ethical standpoint, where they sit, they can't actually call people on their shit and give
I've
that
never
kind of
had someone
advice,
speak
right?
to me like that. Yeah, I've never had someone
No.
speak to me like that. He was the first one. I'm so thankful that,
Yeah.
because like if
Yeah.
someone's sitting there saying they're that depressed or whatever they're going through, to say something like that, he was like, dude, I can't give you a pill. He didn't call me dude, but that's pretty much
Yeah.
what his rhetoric was, right? Like he's like, I can't give you a magic pill. Like I'm willing to
Mhm.
work with you to figure out where we can make some improvements in your life, but you got to understand, like it's a process, man. Like it's a journey, and
And
like
I think that's one thing that most people, it's difficult when you look at the community of people who have been diagnosed with mental illness versus the community of just like, I don't want to say normal, but like people who are not afflicted by a medical disease, who are going through a similar affliction and having similar overlapping symptoms and feelings. Because, in both circumstances, neither one of them is going to get out of that situation quickly. And I think when you're talking to either or, one person, I mean, everyone's pretty desperate when they're in a situation like that, but it's heartbreaking to just to encourage people to have patience and to understand that while we might want to see progress, it's not linear. It could take years. It's going to take a lot of hard work, and you're never really going to feel like you've arrived because it's not something that we can tangibly measure. It's not something we can quantify like weight loss or anything like that. So, inspiring people to, and that's why I think being open and being honest with what we are actually going through, the ups and the downs, publicly is really, really important because people need to understand, just because you got out a little bit doesn't mean that you're not going to take two steps forward and one step back. And to keep that collective support of a mental health community going so that people don't quit, so that they don't fall backwards, so that they understand they're not alone. And we're all over the place. No one's going like this on this kind of journey, that's for sure. So I think establishing those communities is absolutely imperative, just so we can have each other's backs and know that someone is in our corner going through not the same thing, but on the same type of ride, at least in the same theme park, so to speak.
yeah, 100%. On that topic, you've kind of moved around quite a bit. You moved to Toronto and then you moved to Vancouver.
Oh,
Like, how have
yeah.
you kind of stayed like
Are you gonna
building?
stay in Vancouver?
No, 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 no. My question was gonna be like, how have you like kind of built like a support group around you? Like, how do you kind of
Mm,
consistently network and make friends? Like, I feel like that's a tough thing to do. Like,
it's very tough.
I've lived in Vancouver my whole life, so I kind of
Uh-huh.
take that for granted. But I feel like if I were to move around, like that might be a difficult thing for me.
Yeah. I have to say that the vibe, the atmosphere of, now I live in North Vancouver. So when I speak, I can't speak for Vancouver downtown. I understand it's different. But for me, moving first from Niagara to Toronto was a blessing because I was 23 and I had some friends from going out and partying, from working in nightclubs, from the gym, from various different environments. And that was such, I was bullied in my final year of university, so I couldn't get out of Niagara fast enough. I just wanted an escape. I wanted to be a different identity, to step into somebody who could kind of shed that snake skin of a small town behind and be in the big city, so to speak. And the culture of Toronto is incredible. It's undeniable. Everybody is from somebody somewhere else, right? There's almost no exclusivity in race or gender, or like everyone is together. Like no one cares where you're from. There's no segregation. Like there's different regions. There's an Italian region, a Portuguese region, a Chinese, but everyone blends, right? Because it's all downtown, it's all together. So it's very welcoming in that sense. And it's almost impossible to walk down the street like Queen Street without saying hi to a stranger. Now in North Vancouver, total complete, it was almost like a culture shock here because personally I found it to be very segregated and very isolating. And it took me a really long time to crack the shells of the people around me and also to just kind of open up to other people, just because where I was at and the focus of my life was on my building my career, on competing. I was very internally focused. And I would say since I've got more confidence and I've grown more stability in my business, and my health is better, so my moods are fluctuating so much less that I'm not competing. I'm much more open to getting connected with my community. So we recently moved to Lynn Valley, and we were in an apartment complex at Upper Lonsdale before, and I just find apartments a little bit, I don't know, they can be isolating because people just come and go very quickly, and you don't really stop to talk to your neighbor. So I found that moving into this community, it's a little bit slower, and I really invested. It's funny, as hard as I push my clients and as horrible as I can be to them in that time that we are together, once that time is done, that professional time, I have developed some of the deepest, most genuine friendships with my clients, which has opened a whole community of other people to me. um, but yeah, I would have to say that the biggest challenge, with moving around is just really being strong in your identity, understanding what your values are and how you're going to make friends. The biggest struggle for me is I don't drink, like, at all drink. It's not that I have any specific reason other than it doesn't work for me. Like, when I drink alcohol, it's a depressant and I get very depressed. And that will usually happen for a day or two. It just doesn't mix with me. But a lot of our social constructs are built around alcohol and drinking and going out and eating food that I'm very picky eater, not in the sense of that I am restricted in what I eat. It's just that I like my food. My partner is maybe an amateur chef, so I have I just want it to be good quality. It's hard for me to cost justify that experience. So making friends, you really have to be sure of who you are and what your values are, and not willing to compromise those. So, being the first person to suggest, why don't we go on a hike? Instead of waiting for someone to invite you out for dinner. Because if you decline something like that, it puts you both in a socially awkward situation, where maybe the person is insulted or they take it personally. But if I am the first person to put myself out on a limb and say, why don't we try this, because that's something that I enjoy, and that is in alignment with my values, we'll get to talk. Just finding different ways to be open. And I've had a lot of awkward encounters just where it didn't work out, and making friends is like being in a relationship. So you have to put yourself out there and be willing and ready for somebody to deny you, or to not be for you. And I just think that the biggest thing that I've learned there is that everybody has their own filter of how they see the world, and 99.99% of the time it's not personal. I have rejected so many potential friendships just because I was in a closed negative space myself internally, that I wasn't able to accept friendship. Right. So when somebody does that upon me, I've learned that it's probably not a personal thing. And, in some circumstances, I've had people come back around 2 years later and be like, hey, are you still interested in going for that hike? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. But you just have to be very secure with who you are. And I also do maintain very strongly my good close core group of friends. It's kind of no transition for me with the global pandemic, because most of my friends I speak with on the phone. So I haven't really lost too much of that connection that I know people have been suffering with, because not having that face to face time, it is very, very hard. That was probably one of the hardest things from moving from Toronto to Vancouver. But, we work around it.
Yeah, when you live across the country from your friends and stuff like that, you kind of have to adjust to like speaking over the phone or video chat pretty quick anyways, I
Like, you
guess.
have to make that a commitment. So that's the number one thing that I've learned, is that, if these are people you really care about, I mean, even a 3 hour time difference for me, sometimes that feels like a lot, because it's just getting the schedules right. And sometimes I can be snippy with my friends because we'll have a time and then they'll have to change it. But just be empathetic and understand that the world is crazy for everybody right now. So, I rescheduled this appointment 3 times on you, right? But,
There it
well, two
is.
times. Third time's the charm. But that's kind of the reality of the world, and just understanding, again, it's not a personal thing. Like, when people shaft you or whatever, but making that a priority to put it on your schedule or to follow up, although you might feel awkward. Learning to apologize is one of the strongest things that I still suck at, but it's one of the best things I've ever gotten better at
Yeah, yeah,
in terms
100%.
of maintaining relationships.
Yeah, I used to be the type to kind of avoid those things for sure. I didn't want to have those weird conversations. I've realized that the way that like you feel awkward about it beforehand is, I feel like the only reason you feel awkward before it is because you just don't ever have those conversations. I've noticed that like
Hmm.
once I was like, you know, say like for example, like having to reschedule something, like having that awkward conversation before, I would have wanted to avoid it. Now it's like, well, the outcome I want is still available. Like,
Hmm.
like we can both still be happy. Like why don't we just,
Hmm.
yeah, it's like understanding, being able to understand that, you know, you can apologize to someone and say, hey, you know what, this isn't going to work for me right now, let's do it later. And then on the reciprocating end, it's like, hey, you know what, that's okay. Like, yeah, we could, like,
Hmm.
there's no time restriction, like you said, there's no time restriction on anything, we set our own
Hmm.
restrictions, right?
Yeah.
So
And I think that's a good point you touched on too. It's just like it feels uncomfortable because we're out of practice. We
mhm,
don't have the skill, right? So it's okay to be bad at something. And I think that's something that I've learned definitely in the last 2, 3 years is just giving myself permission to suck. To not be great, to embarrass myself, to fumble. And when you're making those mistakes, I mean, it is humbling. It makes you feel very uncomfortable, but oftentimes, I mean, that is literally the description of growth, right? So if I want to be better, I have to be beyond my comfort zone just a little bit. So if I'm always playing in this field of, well, whatever, this is what I'm used to and this is what feels good, I'm not getting better as a person. And that's not okay with me. That's not in line with my values. So, you know, putting yourself into these uncomfortable situations while you're learning the skills. One of my favorite quotes is, you have to forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know while you were still learning it. So if you don't have the skills of apologizing, it's going to feel really difficult, really awkward the first couple times you need to do it. And you're going to suck at it. You're going to be, insincere. You're going to bumble. You're going to make excuses. But, the next time you'll improve. And that's, the joy, I guess.
yeah, yeah, I think that it's kind of funny because, you know, I'd say like an adult, I'm 24, so yeah, I could confidently say I'm an adult, you know. I think that that's an adult thing, and
Very wise for 24.
I think that this is like the thank you. I think this is the first year that I've actually been able to, like, when I mess up, just be like, hey, sorry, I did X. Like it's like without an excuse, just own it. Just own your
Yeah.
action. Just without being like, hey, I had to do it because of, you know, this or that. It's like, hey,
Such
I
a
did
fine line
this.
between excuses and reasons. That's such a tiny narrow margin there, but
I don't even think
yeah,
there's a
just being
difference,
able
man.
to just say this is what I did. And I think that's always something that I've really struggled with, but only recently come to acceptance is you have to own your actions. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean you are your actions. It doesn't mean your mistakes or your excuses, but you have to take responsibility at some point.
Yeah.
And it's only when you take that responsibility you can move past it, right? But if you're constantly, you can go two ways. You can either be in denial or you can just be consumed and just think that your identity is your mistakes. And neither one of those things is true. It's somewhere in the middle, but you have to have that awareness, that responsibility um, of taking responsibility, sorry.
Yeah, I think yeah, you got to own your actions, but you got to own everything, like win or lose, right? Like you got to take, like
Mhm.
we said, you got to take account for your wins, throw them in the cookie jar, but then also take account for your losses and be like, well, what can I learn from this? You can't,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't be in denial of either one. You can't just deny all the bad and just look at the good. You also can't deny all the good and just look at the bad and be like, oh, I have to work
Mm.
on X, Y, and Z all the time. Like it's like,
Yeah.
dude, you do have to take account for the good as well. I feel like
Amen.
that's something that I forget to do sometimes. I'm like, dude, you know, sometimes it's okay to just relax. Like,
Yeah. I don't know. I'm still learning that one.
yeah, I feel like that's
Relax? What does that mean? Sorry.
yeah, who are they? What's that? I've never heard of them.
Mm-mm.
It's funny. It's funny. I always feel like, yeah, but you know what though? I feel like sometimes if you don't relax, this is something that I've noticed about myself. If I don't relax, then I'll get stuck in kind of a loop of, you know, being super busy but not like productive.
Mm.
If I don't take
And
like a step back,
relaxation.
Yeah, if I don't
It's a
take like
lot
a
like
step back.
happiness, right?
Mm,
Different for everybody. So how you relax, how I relax. I can't tell somebody, people are like, oh, light a candle, take a bubble bath, go to a spa. I'm like, no, that does not work for me. I think the last vacation that I took where you're supposed to be chill and lie on a beach, I successfully sat down for 10 minutes. And after that, I was like, okay, what can I do? Right? Like it's just, and that's not me, and that's okay. But some people, like, they need that time to relax. They need the bubble baths and the candles and, the nothingness, the TV, whatever it might be. But I think that understanding that there's no right or wrong, there's some ways that might not be conducive to your well-being that people would do for relaxation. But again, that's a personal strategy, just like happiness. And I think that's the whole amazing joy of life, is this never-ending journey of personal discovery. But you're so right. If you don't give yourself that time, who are you serving?
yeah, and I feel like sometimes you just need to recalibrate. Like I feel like sometimes you need to take a step back and look at what you're actually busy with and be like, is this actually taking me steps towards what I want to do and where I want to be, who I want to be?
Mhm.
Like sometimes you can just keep accepting, different jobs, or just keep accepting different
Yep.
responsibilities, and you're like, dude, I'm working 24/7 and I feel like I'm just not doing anything. Like taking that
That's one
step
of the
back.
biggest, yeah.
Sorry,
That's
I
one
was
of the biggest things I work on with my clients now, is just understanding, when you look, I don't know if you use an agenda or a calendar, but I highly encourage people to do so, even at, a bare minimum layer, whether it's a book or an app, because once you fill in and you get accountable for your time on a daily basis, you can look through that list very clearly and see, whose dreams am I fulfilling here? Am I just busy for the sake of being busy? Or is this fulfilling my life purpose? Is this something that resonates with my values? Or am I just trying to get by? Am I just trying to fulfill, something else? Is anything on my schedule right now, anything on my calendar for me, or, for my life vision? And, when you see that, when you see like those hours allotted in that time, it's so clear to see what changes you need to make and see, who you're living for. So love my
wow.
calendars.
Yeah, that in and of itself is like my takeaway from today. Just to actually
Oh,
see
that's
like
awesome.
what you're spending your time on and where I needed that. So I'm really thankful for that right there. That was a golden
You're
nugget.
welcome.
'Cause, yeah, the last
Thanks.
few weeks, other than just doing a little camping trip with a couple buddies, I've just been kind of stupid busy, and I feel like
And
yeah.
that's okay. That's good. It's in a season, right? So I
Hmm.
think sometimes people can misconstrue that advice as like, every single day I have to be doing something that progresses my dreams forward. And I mean, if that's the mentality that you want to take away from it and you apply that and it works for you, good for you. Personally, I do try to do something every day, but it's a little something, right? It's 20 minutes commitment of, my future life or whatever. But for other people, like, you just have to do, a quarterly assessment or a monthly assessment, and just kind of ground yourself, like, where do I want to be in 5 years? Who am I? Who am I trying to become? Am I doing anything for the person I'm trying to become, or am I just doing something for Mark today? Right? And that's okay if you're just doing something for Mark today. Just know where you are. Just know where you are, and, in a month, just say, hey, could I I'm really busy right now, and, I got to make this money, and that's okay. But, like, how will I know when I'm done, and when it's time to switch gears? When do I get to transition into my future life self? Because all we have is my catchphrase for my company. One day, it's spelled WONDAY. So the whole idea behind that, and the theme of it, the motto, the company, I don't know what it's called, manifesto, it's own the now. Because you have this moment, you have now. Are you aware of it? What are you doing with it? Who are you giving that moment to? Is it your past self, your future self? Is it to somebody else? Right? We have this moment now, and we want to win it. If I can win this moment, I can win my day. I can win my week. I can win my month. I can win my life, right? If I take responsibility for the time before me presently. What am I doing? And it's okay if you're wasting time on social media, because maybe that's a signal from your brain, your body, that you need a break, right? Maybe the reason we procrastinate or we overwork is because you need something. But tune in to what that is and what you need from it. What is the deeper message? Like, why are you doing the things you do? There's nothing wrong with those things, but often they're a signal that, you know, you need to address something. So that's kind of where I like to go with it and encourage people, you know, if there's something in front of you, don't judge it good or bad. Just ask yourself, like, what is this telling me? What is this giving me a message? What do I need to do with this time so that I would be happy at the end of the day with myself and where I'm going.
Wow, that's huge. Because I'm someone that gets distracted like so often. Like I'll find myself maybe like scrolling through my phone while I
Fair.
work or things like
Yeah.
that. It's huge to actually, I get mad at myself and I'm like, come on, man. And I'll like kind of throw my phone on my bed or throw it somewhere else. And I'm like, dude, I gotta like lock this thing away. But then I'll just get
Yeah.
distracted with something else. So it's actually interesting that you say that. I'm kind of just digging deep right now into my head. I'm like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Maybe sometimes that's just your body sending you a message like, take a break, have a nap. Like, I don't know, do
Yeah.
something
Give
different.
yourself permission.
Yeah. Don't get
I think
mad.
that's the one thing that people don't do enough is two things. They don't give themselves enough breaks. So throughout the day, I'll take 10 breaks. They're like 5 to 10 minutes, but I will literally stand up, do something. And a break is not opening social media because
Mhm.
that's distracting your brain. It's pulling you into something else. A break is like literally just being present with what you're doing. So when I finish this call, I'm going to get up, I'm going to tune in with my body, I'm going to do some stretches, some deep breaths. That's my break. Then if I want to go on social media and, you know, write a caption or something, then that is considered work, right? That even if I am scrolling, right? But I also think, and then the number two is people need it. So that's managing your transitions. And number two is like read those signals, man. If you're not taking those breaks, if you're not managing your transitions, um, you're not giving your brain, I don't know the statistic, but it's something like uh, you know, what we used to 20, 30 years ago, all the information that was available to the president of the United States 30 or 40 years ago, right? So the person with maybe the most information in the world and access to it. We now, as individual, yo, Joe, you know, Sarah from Canada, just average person, I get access to all the same amount of that information in 20 minutes. I can access more information than the president of the United States. So how much information, how much my brain is scanning, how much is coming in, right? I'm overwhelmed. If you don't give yourself a break, your brain is going to force that break. And it's going to force that break in the form of a distraction, of procrastination. It just wants to do something that is mind numbing, that is completely like indulgent, that gives it that hit of dopamine because you're not giving it rest. So all of the chemicals in there, all of the things that your brain needs to do to be stable and balanced and in a function of homeostasis, which is where it wants to be, it can't do if you're bombarding it with crap and never giving it a second to rest. It's just not optimized.
Yeah, that's huge. I needed that right now. I'm really thankful that we had this
Thank
conversation.
you.
This is
Yeah,
perfect.
me too. Sorry, I got a little passionate there, but
No, no, that's
I just
actually
wish people,
perfect.
it's okay to take a break. It's okay to take a, it's not bad. It doesn't mean you're lazy. It's like, you know, you're it's sending you a signal. I need some rest. And I wish we could respect our brains and bodies more because you know, just because we have this culture, you know, and I think it's changing. I do see it shifting and I'm very grateful for that. But just this, you know, overload culture, like I have to, you know, even myself, I'm wearing so many different hats and maybe that's just what culture is and what our society is promoting. But like, that's also ridiculous. You know, who said I have to be 20 different things? Why can't I just be one thing and just be happy in that one thing? So, you know, giving yourself permission to, and it's such a frustrating beautiful world and a beautiful life because I'm never going to get to do all of the things that I want to do. It's just impossible. And being okay with that and just saying, you know what, I love dancing, but I don't have to take ballet classes. You know, I can just dance for my own enjoyment. I don't have to be a dancer. And just giving yourself that space and honoring the fact that there's a lot that you need to learn to say no to in order to actually be the best of who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely know what you mean because sometimes I bite off more than I can chew. Sometimes I want to, be the best like I try something. I'm very like very impulsive in that like I try something, I start to love it and I'm like this is my thing now. This
Hmm.
is me, dude.
Yeah.
I always kind
And
of
we do love novelty. You know, it's
yeah.
important to weave that in, but also know, you know, you don't have to do it all. You really
Hmm.
don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely just to kind of focus on, a couple things is probably going to make most people, I'd say, happier, because then you can actually start to pursue them, get better at them, face
Have some
challenges with them.
progress.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
you nailed
I
it.
I need to digest that for a bit. I think it's coming up on noon here. We've been recording for over an hour. I'm going to start to wrap things up
Wow,
here.
that went by fast. Thanks,
It
Mark.
always
That was
does.
good.
It
Yeah,
always
that was
does.
really good.
This was awesome. I'm really, really happy. I'm really thankful
Yeah,
for
thank you for
this.
your time.
No, no, thank you. But your job's not done yet. So what I'm gonna get you to do, I get everyone to do this as well. I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit here. But shout out
My
your
favorite.
yeah, shout out your social media. Tell people where they can find you one more time. But I'd like you to wrap things up by just sharing a little positive message for the world. Just share a little positivity for people.
Okay, so
It can
if
be
I were
short.
to,
You
that's
can do
okay.
you.
Okay. Um, okay. So I guess we'll start with my social media because that'll be easier. I know
Mhm.
that, but it's like it's a lot of pressure. It's like your final words, which it is. So my social media is Sarah Jessica Taylor, with an H. I don't know how else you would spell that, but it'll be tagged in Mark. So there, I really share a lot of vulnerability and my heart and my brain and everything that I go through in the caption. So please, read a caption. I understand what is provocative for images on social media. So, some of that's up there, but really my heart is in the words that I write. I love writing more than anything. So I have a blog, that is, it's one day, WONDAY.ca. And the link to that has its own Instagram page. It has links straight to the blog. It's in my profile in the bio, so that's pretty easy to find there as well. And then I guess the last thing that I would really like to leave people with, it comes from a lot of the work that I do, as an NLP, practitioner and coach, and that's really helping people understand that the stories that you have now, a lot of those are programs that we decisions that we decided, identities that we created when we were under the age of 10. We were just kids, you know? So the most inspiring part of my job is always when somebody realizes that you are not your thoughts. And a lot of the thoughts that you have come from a place that is so well intentioned. Something that, is really about your survival and your well-being, and it cares about you and being the best, but it's your job, it's your responsibility, and it's your privilege as an adult to go back and reconnect with yourself and who you are and say thank you so much for trying to keep me safe and all of this, and I respect that and I see where that came from and I'm grateful, but I'm an adult now. I'm somebody else. I can let go of that. I can move forward. And when you do that, you are so unlimited. You get to choose, who you want to be and the actions that you take. And really when you understand that, nothing is impossible. So those are my final words. Thank you.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Honestly.
it's my pleasure. Sincerely. Thank you.
All right. Well, there we go. That is all. Thank you guys so much for watching this. And thank you so much, Sarah, for joining me.
Take care. Thank you, Mark.